Either we heal as a team, or we're going to crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. We're in hell right now, gentlemen. Believe me. And we can stay here, get the shit kicked out of us, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb out of hell. 1 inch at a time. You know, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. Hell yeah. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw with our fingernails for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches, that's gonna make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's gonna win that inch. And I know if I'm gonna have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that inch. Because that's what living is. The 6 inches in front of your face. Now, I can't make you do it. You gotta look at the guy next to you. Look into his eyes. Now, I think you're gonna see a guy who will go that inch with you. You're gonna see a guy who will sacrifice himself for this team because he knows when it comes down to it, you're gonna do the same for him. That's the team, gentlemen. And either we heal now as a team, or we will die as individuals.
Man, that speech gets me fired up every week. That's why I play it as my opening. Welcome to the show, guys. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. Thank you for tuning in. Today, I have a very, very special guest with me. And without further ado, I would like to introduce him so you guys could meet him and get to know his work. His name is Dan Dix. He formed a group up in Canada called Press for Truth. And he was inspired back from a Bilderberg meeting back that they had in Ottawa, Canada. And from there on out, he's been hot on the globalist trail. And, I mean, this guy is amazing. He is an amazing filmmaker. He is the voice for truth in Canada. You know, to all my Canadian listeners, if you guys didn't have Dan Dix, then you guys really wouldn't have truth in Canada. He is like the Canadian version of Luke Radowski. Okay, he is a really awesome individual. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you guys to Dan Dix. Dan, say hello.
Hey man, thanks so much, and thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
No problem, dude. You're an amazing, amazing filmmaker, and you're just an amazing individual around. And I want to get you as much exposure for your work as you possibly can. Your most recent film, Into the Fire, is incredible. I suggest everybody go out and buy a copy of it. Dan shows from a reality perspective, a truthful perspective, a real perspective of what happened on the ground at the G20. Dan, tell the audience about your movie and what caused you to make Into the Fire.
Yeah, sure. We basically started working on this film basically when things started changing around here in Toronto, probably about 2 months or so leading up towards the G20 summit that came here last summer. And as soon as we started noticing a little bit more security coming around town, a little bit more police, and then they started putting up these fences around what's called the red zone, we figured we better get out there and start documenting all of it. And that's basically how it started. And then leading up to the actual summit, on that weekend, I put together a pretty solid team of about 8 different camera guys who were helping me, and we pretty much covered every area of the city that we could and just shot tons of footage. I think I went through about 140 hours of footage or so. When we sat down to watch it all, it was quite a bit of stuff, and it was a bit of a daunting task at first to go through it all, but we got through it, and we managed to put together a pretty solid, cohesive 2-hour documentary where we pretty much keep it fairly chronological, where we go through the entire weekend that happened here at the G20. We go through it day by day, basically starting out with when I met Charlie Beach, when Charlie came down here to help us cover the event and do some filming and do what Charlie does best, do his bullhorning thing and then using his satire and his comedy. So yeah, we basically traveled around with Charlie for a little bit in the beginning, and that's when everything basically started. Is when Charlie got arrested, there is when everything started getting crazy, and we just kept filming. We made videos that weekend to put them out so people could see just what was going on, because the mainstream media certainly wasn't giving Canadians the true picture about what was going on, so people were tuning in to see it. And 9 months later, we've been working really hard on just making this film as solid as it can be, and just put it up about 2 weeks ago there, and we're just hoping the link will spread and spread. People, a lot of people need to see this film because we got more summits coming up. Got another one in France soon, another one in Mexico, and we hope that this film can give people the tools and show them what kinds of things they should be looking out for, and those sorts of things. So yeah, it's really important at this point. Awareness is key. We need everybody to see this film.
I agree. I mean, the movie is very powerful. I challenge anybody to watch the movie and not have an anxiety attack in the first hour of the film. It's you did an amazing job, and I'm not blowing smoke. As I've said to you before, to me the movie is very powerful because you cannot there's no way that you can't feel the anxiety and that you guys must have felt on the ground and the police state that it turned into. And it was so extreme because Canada, Canadians, you guys usually bust Americans, bust our chops and say, oh, you guys are kind of like gung-ho and cowboyish and, you guys want to fight. Canadians are kind of more low-key than Americans in that sense. And here you guys had your police were ripping people out of the crowd one by one and snatching them and stuff. I mean, it was just creepy to watch, Dan.
Yeah, it was completely surreal, even for us to experience it, to watch it. In regards to the police, I mean, there was 22 different jurisdictions of cops who descended on the city of Toronto. So they were coming in from all over, from BC, from Newfoundland, Quebec, Barrie. They were coming from all over the place. So I think that played into a little bit of why, they had the attitudes that they did, because they're not dealing with their normal boss. They're taking orders from, basically the piece in their ear, the little thing in their ear that says march west now, then they march west. And that's basically what they did. And in the film I interview a lot of the people who were directly affected by this thing, and some of the stories that were coming in were just shocking. As the people are sitting there telling me their stories, I'm just thinking, I can't believe this has happened in my country. I mean, the case with the guy's name's Sean Salvati, who was just going to see a Blue Jays game. He was just here in town. This guy's not a protester. He's not an activist. He's just a regular guy. This is a whole week before the summit even came. He didn't even really know what the G20 was or what it's all about. And this guy's he leaves from a baseball game, and he casually said to some cops walking by, he said, good luck with Saturday. And they pulled him over out of his cab, took him out of the car, and said, wait, what did you say to those cops? Did you say good luck with Saturday? And then took him downtown, beat him up, strip searched him, detained him there for 24 hours, interrogated him. And, this is a guy who just was literally caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But now he is an activist. I mean, it's made a protester out of him. And I suppose that's the one good thing that maybe came out of this is that, your average Sally Soccer Mom and Joe Sixpack who are watching this stuff are sitting back going, whoa, this doesn't look right. In fact, something is extremely wrong here. So a lot of people have woken up around here because of some of the things they've seen. Another guy there, John.
Hang on, Dan. We're going to break.
Sure.
We'll pick up right where we left off when we come back on the other side. Guys, stay tuned. You don't want to miss a beat. Dan Dix is going to be with me when we come back. Welcome back to the show. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. And today I'm joined with Dan Dix. And before we went to break, Dan was telling you guys about the G20 and about Canada and the police state. So I'll let him pick right up where he left off. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was just telling you a little bit of some of the stories that were told to me and some of the interviews that I was doing there. And one of them that really stands out for me is a gentleman named John Crine. He's an elderly gentleman. He works for the Canadian government, and again, he was kind of wrong place at the wrong time. He was at Queen's Park, and they ripped his amputee, his leg off, his fake leg. The cops just ripped his leg off, and then ordered the poor guy to hop to the squad car. And so when he said, I can't do that, I physically am not able to do that. They dragged him along the pavement, and, you see in the interview, he showed you how his elbows were being dragged across the ground, and then they threw him in the paddy wagon and sent him down to what is now being referred to as Guantanamo Bay. They wouldn't give him his leg back because they said it could be used as a weapon, or it might be hiding weapons in it. And that's just one of the many, many stories that we unfortunately had to hear, but it was important for people to know, these things, that what took place here, because you're certainly not going to get any of that from the mainstream media, that's for sure.
Well, without a doubt, and I remember the story from even before the film. I remember the guy with the prosthetic leg, being interviewed not only by you guys, but I think even the Real News picked it up. Because of your guys' coverage of it. And I remember seeing, I think you interviewed him and put an original video up, and he explained that he was just out with his daughter. And this guy's a government employee at the time, and now he's had to retire from his job, and he's on disability because of, what happened to him and the trauma that he got because of that. I mean, that's a pretty traumatic event, and what they did to the people in those camps, I'll just call it a prison camp because that's what it was. And those prison camps they set up, I mean, it's horrible. They took the doors off of the bathrooms, off the porta potties, and then the male guards would stand there and watch the female detainees pee. I mean, and I know here in America the women were threatened with gang rape, at some. And I don't know if that happened up in Canada. I don't know if your cops went to that extent, but I know that here women have been threatened with rape and stuff. So was there any of that going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that did happen here. That came out that weekend. There was a girl who did an interview. I can't remember. Maybe it was Real News. I can't remember now who put it out there. But yeah, that also took place here. And it's just despicable. Like, what is going on with the cops, and what is their mentality, and where did things change from when it was good police officers that you could look up to who served the public to these guys who are, ripping guys' legs off and threatening girls with rape, and you got guys like Officer Bubbles who, threatened, to arrest that girl for assault because she was blowing bubbles. It's just shocking at the state, the point in the police state that we're at. But getting back to the Guantanamo Bay, some of that footage is available in the film. It's the first time anybody's ever seen video footage from the inside of there. And a lot of people are asking me, how on earth did you get the police footage?
I was about to ask you that myself. How did you get the footage from inside the police cameras? That was pretty good footage.
Well, it's just a matter of going through the system and using it to your advantage. Down in the States, you guys call it the Freedom of Information Act request. But up here in Canada, it's referred to the Access to Information Act. And that's what we did. We filed a Access to Information Act to obtain all of that footage. It was a bit of a lengthy process. We had to get Charlie Beach to sign basically a release form giving us permission to obtain the footage. And anytime you want footage of yourself from the police, whether they have you on CCTV cameras or they've taken pictures of you, you can get that released to you. They legally are obliged to respond to your request within 30 days, and as long as there are nobody else in the footage, they are legally obliged to give it to you. They have to. And that's what we did with the Charlie Beach footage, because in the beginning of this arrest, he was the only guy in there. So luckily there was no other faces in the footage that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to get the footage. But yeah, my associate Brian Law, producer and editor of the film, did the paperwork, and they gave us all 19 hours of Charlie's footage, which we're going to be putting up soon this week on pressfortruth.ca, because the government's not releasing this footage, the police is not, so we're going to put it out for the public record, all 19 hours, so people can check that out if they want. But yeah, that's how.
Are you going to make it like downloadable in case anybody wants to rip it, or just a thought, like a torrent file or something? Or if anybody's got Real Player, I guess if it's on your site, if they have Real Player, they'd probably be able to rip it from the site with Real Player, right?
Yeah, I'm not positive because it's so huge. It's 19 hours, and right now we just have it in 6 parts on YouTube, 3-hour chunks. But the whole task of getting it into the film was tricky because the video is in a format, a codec that you cannot edit with. And after doing a little research, I realized, I suppose it makes sense. It's CCTV police footage, and they make it uneditable so that people can't tamper with evidence. So what we had to do was capture all 19 hours of it, and then set up a tripod and film the monitor, and then capture all 19 hours of that, and then go through it and find all the usable bits. So it was a lot of work, but it's definitely interesting to see what it was like in there. And people got to remember, I mean, for what you see in the film, it was way worse than that. Each of those cages sometimes had upwards of 30 to 40 guys per cage. So you can just imagine what it would be like in one of those things with 40 other guys in there. It's just unreal.
The footage between the police footage that you were able to get from inside of, would you call it Torontonomo?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, and the whole 5 feet from, or 5 meters from the wall or whatever it was. That and then you comes to find out that you guys found out later that wasn't even real. That wasn't even actually an enforceable law. That was just the cops doing their own interpretation of the law, pretty much.
Pretty much. I mean, the way it goes, this is an old law. I think it's from 1939. It's old wartime legislation that says you cannot enter a public works without being identified, and that's fine for wartime and with government buildings. But what they did is they tried to expand what the definition of a public works is to not just be government buildings, but to be anywhere within 5 meters of this fence is what they originally had said. And yeah, it turns out, Chief Bill Blair, Toronto's chief here, ended up saying later, he admitted that, no, actually we didn't expand that bill, but, I was just trying to keep the bad guys out, is the quote, was his response to why he lied to people. Said, we have a responsibility to protect the summit, and so I was trying to keep the bad guys out. But Canadians' rights were completely obliterated that weekend. I mean, I couldn't walk like 5 feet down the road without getting stopped, having my bag searched, having them ask me for my ID. And normally I just wouldn't give it up, but on this particular weekend I had to, otherwise I would have been sitting right in that cell as well with everyone else, and the footage, never would have gotten out there. So, yeah, that Public Works Protection Act that they enacted is what gave them the ability to stop people. And it wasn't just 5 meters within the fence. They were stopping people upwards of 3.6 kilometers away from the summit. So all of downtown was basically a police state, and you had to show your ID and tell them who you are at any given time.
Jesus. All right, Dan, hang on. We're going to break. Guys, stay tuned. You do not want to miss the rest of this interview. We'll be right back.
No return, nigga, you better believe this. Mary Magdalene giving birth to the children of Jesus. The evolution of the world, bloody and dramatic. Human beings killing monkeys to conquer the planet. The kingdoms of Africa and Mesopotamia. Machine gun your body with depleted uranium.
All right, welcome back. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. Today I'm joined by Dan Dix from Press for Truth. And not only is Dan an activist and a mouth for truth in Canada, but he's a filmmaker. And we've been talking about his film Into the Fire. It's his latest full-length film, and it shows what was going on at the Canadian G20. And we're going to get into a specific something that I was talking to Dan about during the break in the G20 in a second, but there's something I want to bring up. Dan made a comment to me, and I find it a little disturbing, so I'm going to try to maybe add my 2 cents in about it. And you can say I'm maybe biased because I've known Dan before I interviewed him, so I consider Dan a friend. So maybe you can say I'm biased because he's a friend. But some people have been criticizing that Dan's selling his video, his newest movie, and I have an issue with that because people have to understand that it costs money to produce this stuff, and it's impossible for someone to live and go out and do this stuff and still have a house and a cell phone and have the camera equipment to be able to produce this stuff and pay whatever fees you have to pay to the government to get the video footage and everything else and then produce it. And it's not like he put it out like when I copy DVDs and I handwrite it on a DVD. Dan produced a professional quality, high quality DVD. And I take personal issue with people, busting his chops that he has to sell it for money. How do you expect him to produce quality films? I mean, he's not doing it for money, but he has to have some money made to reimburse him for I'm sure he's probably spent at least $10,000, $15,000 producing it. I didn't even ask him yet. And it would be up to him to tell anybody whether or not he wanted to actually tell how much money he spent on it. But I would venture a guess from the production value of it, it was probably 10 or 15 grand he spent on producing the film. And that's a lot of time and effort and energy put into it. So I think people need to back off and lay off him. That's just my personal view. But, I'll leave it at that. Anyway, getting back into it, Dan was also telling me, I had a question for him. During the break, I'd asked him if the black bloc that he saw had been working with the cops at the G20, because they have been caught before. In fact, Dan, I believe you guys caught them before, and you had some footage sent to you from another protester in Canada, right?
Yeah, well, the way that happened is I went to cover an event, protest in 2007 in Montebello, Quebec, protesting the Security and Prosperity Partnership. And I just captured a whole bunch of footage, so did my friend Steve. And then when we got home from the event, I mean, we didn't go there with the thought of making a film or the plans of making a film. We just went there to document it and get some footage. But when we came back, I was looking at my footage, we're looking at Steve's footage, and then we see online this clip that comes out of the agent provocateur situation where 3 Quebec police officers are caught on video, completely caught red-handed, dressed up as aggressive, angry protesters with rocks in their hands. And so that footage was graciously given to us to use in both films. And it's an unbelievable clip where you'll see the union leader in this particular protest confronting these guys and pointing out to everybody that these guys are cops. These guys are not with us. These guys are cops.
Oh, he outright says it. And I got to give that old man credit because he's got a brass set that wouldn't fit in a dump truck because he walked right up to them and he was like, "These guys are cops, everybody." And some of these guys looked pretty brutish. I mean, some of these guys looked like brain dead brute, musclehead zombies. And this old man showed that it doesn't matter It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in a dog. And that old man walked up and showed how tough he really was. And those guys backed right down. So, I mean, you Canadians, you guys, despite people can joke around and say, oh, Canadians are wimps or anything, you guys really don't know the Canadians I know. These guys have the Canadians I know, they're all tough guys. So you guys got to check out Dan's footage. These guys really stood up. I mean, yeah,
he was definitely impressive with that, and I like when he reached in and started ripping their masks off to try to expose their faces for the camera.
Yeah, he was just trying to pull them right down.
Yeah, their bandanas, and he's trying to show the camera who they are. And at that point, that's when they knew they were caught, and they didn't have any other option but to dive into this line of riot cops to make it appear as though they were being arrested. But, of course, in the days to follow, it all came out that these guys were cops. And the Quebec police actually ended up admitting to it. And they said, yeah, those were our officers, and they were just performing their duties. And when they were asked about The Rock, what about The Rock? They said, well, that's just part of the costume. But, I mean, this guy was trying to incite and provoke other people to pick up rocks. And that's an act of provocation. I don't know how you say that, but that's exactly what it was. So these guys were caught doing. And that's why we remain vigilant of that for the G20 Summit in Canada. I mean, it's not a stretch of the imagination to think that they may do it again. I mean, they were caught red-handed doing it before. So we were constantly on the lookout. You'll see in the beginning of the movie, I went to a town hall meeting where the head of the SIU Security Integrated Unit and the guys in charge for all the police, I asked them, said, look, can you assure to me that you will not use agent provocateurs in this summit? And his answer was, I am not at liberty to discuss security issues in an open format.
Yeah, that's very telling just by what he said.
For sure. So we constantly were being on the lookout for that. And, the bottom line is what happened was the Black Bloc, it looks to be like it was about anywhere from 75 to 110 people or so, who anywhere where these guys were, there were no cops to be found. So they were basically given a green light to go ahead and smash banks and light 4 police cars on fire and walk around the city for an hour and a half, not being bothered whatsoever. There were even reports that came through that the police were, in fact, ordered to stand down. They had direct stand-down orders saying, do not engage, do not engage. It's frustrating for the police officers, too, because they're just sitting there watching it happen, and the thing in their ear is telling them, don't engage. So the bottom line is,
which is interesting. Who gave the order to allow the Black Bloc to go and bust windows, attack banks, set cars on fire, take photo ops of themselves on these cars and all over the cars, and yet peaceful protesters who were people that weren't even protesting, people that were just sitting in the park, got assaulted and arrested.
Yeah, and that's another point we make is that, these cars were allowed to burn for hours. They were almost dripping metal at the end of it. They were allowed to burn because they had to assure that the mainstream media got their photo opportunity. And that's all people saw around the world when they tuned in on TV was the burning cop cars. And of course, this, takes away the message from the 40 to 50,000 legitimate protesters there with a very legitimate cause are now demonized, and the rest of the world is looking at them as, oh, look at these bad protesters. Of course they had to kettle them. Of course they had to have the most massive arrests in Canadian history because look at what those bad guys did. But the bottom line is it was a very, very small percentage, about 75 kids and anarchists dressed in black who caused the destruction. And the bottom line is they were allowed to do it. So it's a tactic that we've seen over and over again now. And that's why we need people to always be on the lookout for that. Because if they've done it before, they can do it again. So we got to keep an eye out for that.
Well, dude, if it weren't for people like you, and look, I have to give credit to everybody. The amount of people that you got footage from. I watched the movie, even the credits till the end, and the amount of people that gave you footage was just unbelievable. So for anybody that hears this broadcast in the future, listening now, hears it on a rebroadcast, if you guys took part and gave Dan footage, kudos to you. Congratulations for standing up.
Yeah, I want to say that. I mean, it was just awesome. Probably about 75% of the movie or so was shot by us, but the rest was given to us by people, Torontonians around here who are familiar with our work and had said, guys, I want to give you my tapes. Where do I send the tapes? I've got some amazing footage here that I think you need to see, and I trust that you will do something good with the footage. I don't know what to do with it, but I know you guys will do something good with it. So we had tapes coming in from a lot of people, and I just feel blessed to be getting such awesome support from people around here because they really contributed to making this film the best it could be.
Well, you guys did a great job. We're going to break, guys. Stay tuned. Dan Dix is going to be with us for the final segment in the first hour. We'll be right back. You don't want to miss it. Go check out his film on YouTube, full length, Into the Fire, during the break. Check it out.
Don't sit back or hesitate to react to the impact. Many taking a nap. In fact, they would fake an attack to make way for the Patriot.
Welcome back to the show, guys. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com, and you're listening to Down the Rabbit Hole. All right, before we went to break, we were speaking with Dan Dix, and he was talking about the Black Bloc, and I had asked him whether or not he thought the Black Bloc was working with the police at the G20, and he was going into the details of what he saw, and he didn't really think that from what he saw, he couldn't see that they were directly working with the cops, but there was some shady activity going on, and which he talked about. And during the break, we discussed that if anybody has footage, that if you see the film, go watch his film, and then if you have footage that you think you might be able to back up or even expand on what Dan has, you can send it to him. Dan, how can people send you footage?
Yeah, if people have things that they think are of interest that they'd like me to see, definitely can send it to P.O. Box 125, Station B, Toronto, Ontario, M5T2CO. And, if you send it to that, I'll pretty appreciate it. And, of course, we'll make a big noise if there's some interesting things there. So we always appreciate that kind of support.
And Dan, go ahead and give everybody how they can view they can order. How can they order a copy of Into the Fire? They can go to your website. Give out your website info.
Sure. Yeah. Everything's on at pressfortruth.ca, and of course we release all of our films online for free. Like you were saying earlier about selling it, I mean, if people know me, I woke up in 1998. I've been doing this a long time. I'm in this to get the word out. But I mean, we do need help. We just simply can't continue unless we have people's support. And that's why we go all out on the DVDs. I mean, Into the Fire's got hours and hours of extra features, of behind the scenes stuff, deleted scenes. My friend Steve, the producer, made a behind the music featurette showing how we did the soundtrack, and lots of cool stuff for the DVD. So if you want to show your support, you can get it at pressfortruth.ca. You can also watch it there for free, and everything's there, pressfortruth.ca, all three films. You can order them, or you can watch them. That's the link.
That's awesome. And again, guys, even if you watch it online on YouTube for free, support Dan. Go to Press for Truth, go to their website, and buy the DVD. It's $20, okay? I bought 2 copies personally from him. One for myself and one for a friend of mine. Now, Dan will tell you, take it and make bazillion copies and hand them out. But all he's asking you is to buy one copy. That's not too much to ask. You know, I have my own personal copy of it. He didn't give me a copy for me, you know, for me to come on, to have him come on the show and everything. I went and I sought him out and said, "Hey, I want you on the show. I want to give you exposure. I watched your film and it's incredible." Okay, isn't that what happened, Dan? You didn't come to me and ask me and beg me or anything like that. I came to you. So that proves how powerful his movie is. Go out there and buy the movie. Support him. It's $20. You guys will waste the money on other useless crap. You'll go watch. You'll take your girlfriend or something to the movies, and you'll spend $40 or $50 on some Hollywood piece of crap. Go get Dan's for $20. You'll have it. You'll be able to show it to your friends, and it's not copyright protected. So, and he encourages you to copy it and give it to other people. What more could you ask from a filmmaker? Support him and support the other guys at Press for Truth. They do a hell of a job.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for your support too, man. We really appreciate that, and you're helping us get the word out. So that's awesome, man. And keep up the awesome work with your show too, man. This is great.
You know, we either stand together or we're going to hang separately, brother. So there's no place to run. This isn't a country thing. You know, it's not like I can run from America to Canada or you can run from Canada to America. We're screwed all over the world. This is the new world order we're up against. So we all have to come together. And, you know, myself, I'm working with, you know, Bob Tuskin. I work with Bob Tuskin. I work with the guys at the Intel Hub. They work with me. You know, we're trying to create bridges and bridge gaps in the truth movement and the patriot movement, whatever you want to call it, and get everybody so that even though we are our own satellite entities, when we have to, we can come together as one very quickly and efficiently and effectively. And we've actually we tested that last week with the whole fake bin Laden thing, and we were able to get together with RTR, the guys over at Restore the Republic, and Gary Franchi happened to be doing a live broadcast at the time, and we called in and we gave like an hour-long commentary while they were showing the real footage, and people really liked it because there was a couple hundred people watching, you know, and this was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and it was only broadcast on the internet. You know, and it wasn't like we advertised it. It was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. And we were able to help get the message out and show that this was all crap and lies. So it's important for us to all work together as an effective, cohesive unit. You know, again, we either stand together or we're going to hang separately. So I will shamelessly promote your video. I will whore you out. I do not care. You guys are an amazing group. Canada really, really, really is lucky to have people like you, Dan. And I say that with you know, the most heartfelt sincerity. You are a friend of mine. I've been in contact with you for about 2 years, you know, back and forth through YouTube and stuff. And I got to say, I've kept a close eye on your work, and it's always been amazing. You're not afraid to get a camera and get in someone's face and ask questions. I mean, I got to give you credit. I seen these big, nasty-looking cops come up, and they're like, ID, and you're like, nope, sorry. You know, you even did it down here in the States. You were like, no. They were like, can we ask you for your ID? And you're like, no, sorry, you can't. You know, you got a brass set that wouldn't fit in the dump truck. So kudos to you, my friend, and thank you for all the work you do.
Oh, well, thanks so much, man. Yeah, we're going to be working on a new video tonight, actually, and probably have that up tomorrow. I was just in Ottawa, just covering the final day of the federal election here in Canada. And while we were there, we decided to go over and pay a little visit to the Canadian wing of the Echelon system, the military base there. And we went down to cover that and had a little conversation with some of the soldiers there. And we went to cover Very Chips Corporation, their subsidiary corporation known as Xmark that used to be here in Ottawa. So we're going to put that video out there probably tonight or tomorrow after I get back from the screening. That's another thing. If you have any listeners who might happen to be in the Toronto area, we're having a screening tonight of the film with a Q&A period afterwards at Conspiracy Culture. It's conspiracyculture.com. The store is down at 1696 Queen Street West. So if you happen to be in the city and you want to come down, want to meet us, want to ask some questions, you can do that tonight at 7 o'clock at Conspiracy Culture. And, yeah, thanks a lot for having me on, man. And we'll definitely keep in touch.
Yeah, Dan, without a doubt. Thank you for coming on, and please give out the information for your website one more time, your YouTube channel, and if you have anything, tell them really quick about your other movies too that you've done, because you did 2 other films. Let them know that where they can purchase those too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the last film we worked on was United We Fall. This is documenting the North American Union, where we spoke with members of the Bilderberg Group and members of the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations and all these guys who are really involved in the push towards the North American Union. And we also spoke with activists like Luke Rudowski and other local activists around here in Toronto to get both sides of the story. So that's why the film's called United We Fall, 3 Nations, 2 Sides, 1 Union. And so, yeah, that's available there as well. And then, of course, our first film, The Nation's Deathbed, where we document what happened at that protest in Montebello, Quebec, and the Security and Prosperity Partnership and all that. So, yep, that's all at pressfortruth.ca, and the YouTube channel is youtube.com/Spider, all one word.
Awesome. Everybody support Dan. Please go out and purchase a copy of any of his films. If you purchase any of them, though, I really suggest you get, my personal favorite, if you can, buy all 3 of them. But if you can only afford one, get Into the Fire. Get it out there. Have screenings in your house. Show people what's up. Tell people what's going on. Because it's very frightening. Watching his film, it shows very fast how it goes from, again, Canada's always been very, at least in my eyes, and the Canadians I know, I get my chops busted. Hey, you guys are so John Wayne-ish, what you guys always want to fist fight. We're a little better than that, Canadians always held themselves to a higher standard. And to see how fast you guys lost your civil liberties in the blink of an eye for nothing. Just because a bunch of scumbag businessmen and bankers come into your town, Yeah. It was just, it was very, very scary. I don't know how else to put it. It was so surreal. It was like, oh my God. You guys, again, I always held you guys to a higher standard than Americans, because Canadians, a little more, you guys are kind of like a cross between the French and and Americans. You guys kind of took what's good about both. Canadians have their own faults too, but you guys took what's good about both cultures and kind of use them, and it was very disheartening to see how fast it went to a police state, Dan. Thanks for being on the show. Guys, we're going to break. Dan, I really appreciate you being on the show. Guys, check out his website, pressfortruth.ca. Check out his movie, Into the Fire, and support him. We'll be right back.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Thanks, Dan.
They killed my entire family, murdered and tortured, raped and pillaged. I was only 5 and I was the only surviving witness. My entire village burned to the ground. He wore a serpent in his crown. Happily committed murder with a frown. And an army of black hooded fiery skull generals and a sorcerer with a cast.
Return, and if I back down now, then forever I burn. This is the point from which I can never retreat. Cause if I turn back now, there can never be peace. This is the point from which I will die, succeed, live in the struggle. I know I'm alive when I bleed. From now on, it can never be the same as before, cause the place that I'm from doesn't exist anymore. This is the point of no return, nigga. You better believe this. Mary Magdalene giving birth to the...
Well, welcome back, guys. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye, from federaljack.com. You just heard an amazing interview with Dan Dix from Press for Truth. Go check out his website. Go check out his films. Support him. Their group is awesome. Again, to the Canadians, you guys need to really support him and pass his movie out and let the other people in your country know what happened and how fast, civil liberties were just swept under the rug. Okay, moving on. I want to talk a little bit, not too much, but I want to discuss a little bit this whole bin Laden psyop that's been going on and what the purpose of this whole bin Laden psyop would be. Coming on in a few minutes, I'm going to have John Preston. He has his own show on this network from 7 to 9. John is, to anybody that knows or listened to John's show or has heard him on my show before, John's retired Special Forces. He's a Green Beret. So I want to get his take on this whole thing because So you guys understand, it's odd that SEAL Team 6 was chosen to go into a very land-based area when there are way better equipped special forces teams that could do the job. They act like SEAL Team 6 is the most, they're the best, special forces team there is. That's totally not true. I mean, there's Delta Force, which they only answer to the president, and Delta's guys usually Delta's guys are made up of, ex-special force. Well, I shouldn't say ex, but people from a broad variety of the special forces community: Army, Marines, Navy, meaning SEALs. So to act like SEAL Team 6 is the top notch, they're just the most secretive team that there is, and they're used for this kind of chicanery and I'll almost call it like false flag type stuff. This is a complete psyop. There's just so many inconsistencies with it. First of all, Bin Laden, again, he's been dead for almost 10 years. He died in December of 2001. He had what's called Morphan syndrome, I think it was called, which it causes your kidneys and your liver to shut down, and you die within 6 years of contracting the disease. So he wasn't going. There's no way he could still be alive to begin with. The videos you see, all the pictures and videos of Bin Laden, they're always changed. They're always different. There's nothing ever matches up. Nothing is ever concurrent. The video they just released, supposedly of him watching himself on video, is ridiculous. I mean, if you actually believe that's Osama bin Laden watching himself on video, you're an idiot. First of all, why is he videotaping himself watching TV? Well, it's for propaganda purposes. Oh, it's for propaganda purposes, all right, but not his. I mean, come on. They're caught lying. They admitted that they faked Bin Laden videos. They admitted that that they were going to fake Saddam Hussein videos. And this is the CIA admitting they do these things. And if you don't think they can, go to my YouTube channel, or better yet, go to federaljack.com, and up in the slider you'll see it says "See Through the Matrix of Digital Deception," and it's got like a picture of what Neo saw at the end of the Matrix, how everything was in code. Click on that and watch the video, and you'll see it exposes how easily they use green screens and digital. I don't want to say photography, like digital video. I don't know my brain is not operating right now. I can't figure the correct word for it, but they use digital editing, and they put things in that weren't there. They can shoot a green screen, and then they can add volcanoes and things in the background, or they can add a street scene in the background. In one case they show, I think the most telling one was, they show this show called Ugly Betty, and you see this reporter is trying to talk to her as she's walking, and she walks into a bus stop and bounces off the bus stop. And the plexiglass on the bus stop, like, it moves, and you see it move the reflection, and it looks real. And then it rewinds it, and it flashes, and it shows you that they really shot the whole thing on a green screen. And the only thing that was real out of the whole shot was the reporter and this girl Betty in the shot. That's it. Everything else was fake, including people walking up and down the street, the delivery guy walking by with a package. All that was added digitally later on. That just goes to show what they can do. Now, if they can do that, if they can do stuff like that and show you and trick you into thinking that, a lot of these shots were actually shot in the street when they were shot in a green screen in a studio somewhere, and then laid on top of shots that were, a camera crew went out and just caught, some shots, 5 minutes of video footage as background. I mean, that's what they're doing. They can fake anything. Even the Zapruder film, that we know it, is not the true Zapruder film, because Time Life had to be subpoenaed to release it. And by the time they released it, things were altered. Even, I believe, Abraham Zapruder, I could be wrong, but I think it was Abraham Zapruder that even admitted that things were a little different. I could be wrong. There's so much information out there about the John F. Kennedy assassination, but it did come out that it had been altered. I don't remember if I'm correct in saying that Abraham Zapruder had also agreed that it had been altered. He might not have, but he did admit that he was people offered him money for the film and everything else, and that they quickly bought it off him. And I mean, you got to wonder, why would they want the film? Time Life bought it and locked it up forever. And there's enough evidence to prove that it had been altered and tampered with. So it's just, look, if they could do it back in the 60s, think what they can do now. They didn't have the digital technology they have now. They didn't have the 3D hologram technology they have now. If everybody remembers, back in 2008, during the election, you had Wolf Blitzer in studio, and one of the pundits for CNN, they digitally had her pop in by a 3D hologram. How did they do that? Well, technology. They even moved the camera around to show that the hologram of her was literally in the studio. So if they can do that, think about what they can do. Like, if they're showing you that they can do this, think about what you don't know they have. You know, I suggest everybody look up Operation Bluebeam. It's important that you guys look this up. Operation Bluebeam is very, very important. Very, muy importante. Go look it up. They plan, even Werner von Braun talked about it. He told his secretary, and I forget her name, but you can just look up Werner von Braun, comma, fake alien invasion. It should pop right up. And you'll see he talked about, to her when he was dying, he said they're going to bring about a one world government. They're going to fake an alien invasion using satellites to project 3D holograms into the sky. And then if you go on YouTube, you'll see videos of like the Virgin Mary and stuff. And people, oh my God, freaking out that they saw the Virgin Mary and everything in the sky. And it totally wasn't really the Virgin Mary at all. It was just, this 3D technology that they have. So it's creepy to know what they actually have out there, and I'm sure there's stuff that even, people like researchers like myself and others have no clue about. I can only imagine what they have hidden in all these underground bunkers. My personal take on the whole underground military base thing is the fact that I don't believe that it's all just doomsday stuff. I believe inside those bunkers, there's eugenics projects going on. I believe they have like technology that we're not privy to hidden in there, because it's easier to hide it in an underground bunker than it is to, you could have a landing pad up on top of a mountain, or hollow out the top of a mountain and have it open up like a set of doors and have a plane. They have vertical takeoff aircraft. So these things can just whoosh, whoosh, right in and out. So, they travel vertical, sideways. There's no dimension that these things can't fly into or out of. And by some research, and when I say these things, I mean these spectacular vehicles that they pretend that are UFOs. And yes, I do believe in aliens and stuff, but I think a lot of the UFO sightings around that people see are these, especially around Area 51, is this technology that they're testing. To me, it's human pilots inside of a man-made aircraft using technology maybe that was, gathered from a crashed alien spacecraft in Roswell. Who knows? The only way we'll know the truth is, first we have to take back our government, okay, and then we can go release these files that they keep everything top secret, and at least find the truth out. The truth may be really odd and really scary, but at least it's the truth. I'd rather know the truth any day than be lied to, because at least with the truth you can prepare for what's really happening. Whereas if you're just being lied to, you can't prepare yourself. You can't know what's really going on. When it comes to Project Bluebeam, people ask me, do I believe in aliens? Look, I'll get it out there. Yes, I do. I believe that I don't believe that we're the only species in the universe. That would be very arrogant. What they are or who they are, I don't know, but I believe there is something else out there. I just don't know what you'd call it. Anyway, we'll be right back, guys. We're going to break. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. Before the break, we were discussing, technology, and I was talking about all the technology that the military has and that we probably have no clue that they have. Okay, so like again, if we know about HARP, it's because HARP is an older version of scalar technology. There's stuff out there we don't know about. There's scalar weapons that they have attached to ships, and scalar technology can be used to do many different things. HARP is a version of scalar technology. It's direct energy weapons. You can look it up, go on Google, Bing, whatever your search engine of choice, Google, whatever it is, and go on Federal Jack. You can look up. I have a couple of different articles about Project Bluebeam and about HARP. I have a ton of stuff about HARP, scalar weapons. There's many other websites that have way more stuff than I do. I can't even begin to think of them off the top of my head. You can just, again, look in a search engine for scalar, SCALAR weapons, and HARP. Look up who Nikola Tesla was. This technology has been around for over 100 years. The whole idea that we have to pay for electricity is absurd, considering Nikola Tesla wanted to make the Tesla coils that you see that these scientists playing with and they admit that they use. Okay, go look up what a Tesla coil is. Well, they were going to use these Tesla coils were going to be used to pull the Earth has, and I'm not going to go into this too deep, but the Earth, it's called 0 point energy, and look it up. It's really interesting. Anyway, he was going to tap into this Earth created, natural energy from the planet itself. And he was going to be able to, with these towers, to give everybody like a wireless free electricity grid that anybody could tap into and have unlimited free electricity from the Earth. You wouldn't have to pay for it. You wouldn't have these nasty, atomic bomb waiting to go off plants that are sitting around the United States and the rest of the planet. Look at what happened with Fukushima. You wouldn't have these. You wouldn't have big petrol-eating, diesel-eating generators running at the other electric plants. You would be able to have this free energy. And J.P. Morgan, who was funding his research, he had little spies all over the place. He found out what was going on, and he went, "Oh hell no!" and tore down Tesla's tower and everything else, and canned his research. Took away all his funding. And then these evil pricks made sure that this guy lived in, pretty much, I don't know how to. People knew who he was, but he wasn't very well known. He was only well known amongst the industry people themselves, like Edison. He was used and abused by Edison. Edison was competing with him because Tesla invented, I believe it was alternating current that he invented, and I could be wrong. I might have it the other way around, but Edison and him were fighting, and in fact, the electric chair came about as a result of Thomas Edison's experimentations into how dangerous electricity could be, trying to prove that his was safer than Tesla's, because he literally electrified an elephant, and which is completely insane. I mean, the guy, that just goes to show you that Edison was a sociopath. I mean, he obviously didn't care about. He didn't care about the animal. He just decided he was going to kill it, and just to prove that somebody's version of electricity, and it really wasn't their I shouldn't say version of electricity. It was two different ways of having electricity running wiring. You have alternating current and you have direct current. Like in direct current, I'm going to get a little scientific here, so please, for the geeks that aren't geeky, listen. In direct current, you have the electrons flowing steadily in a single direction, like forward, in like a loop. Okay? Is everybody on the same page? Whereas in alternating current, okay, it's flowing in multi-directional. Okay, it's not just like, it's the difference between, the best way I could describe it is, I'm trying to think how I could describe this in layman's terms. It's not easy to do this. You know what? The best way, just Google AC/DC if you're not sure, because I don't want to dumb it down too much and screw it up. I'd rather people go look it up. I don't want to be too geeky with it. But the point is, the difference between the current, okay, Tesla's worked better. It was more efficient. You could have higher voltage with it. And, of course, Edison felt trapped by this. He felt threatened by this. And Edison was in the know. He was another schmuck. But they battled it out. Long story short, he tried to make him look like a moron, and it was between him and the other powers that be that they hid his work. And it's because Tesla was working on stuff that would free humanity. He wanted to create a thing called the death ray, which would keep everybody free, because if every country had a death ray, nobody would want to nobody would really want to screw with another country, because you could just press a button and vaporize. It was mutually assured destruction, pretty much. Kind of like what these psychos in the first Bush administration and the Reagan administration and the second Bush administration and even somewhat in the Obama administration are all about. But without the atomic bombs and the hydrogen bombs, this was a death ray, and that HARP is pretty much the death ray that Tesla had talked about. He envisioned if everybody had the ability to cause hurricanes and volcanoes and everything else and tsunamis, nobody would want to screw with each other. It'd be a harmonious planet, because everybody would be on a level playing field. Who knows if it was just the dreams of a mad scientist, but this guy really had his technology and his science together. He knew his stuff, and he was just incredible. And when he died, the FBI was waiting like salivating dogs to pull his paperwork. I mean, he died, and they were his body was still in his bed, and they were literally confiscating his paperwork. So they kept it very quiet. His death is a little shady. The details of his death, I suggest you go look into it. It's a little shady. I mean, he was old, but it is plausible that they might have ushered his death along in order to get his stuff. Because again, the people at the very tippy top, or at least at the tippy top of what we see, not who really controls things, but at the tippy top of what we see and what we know. We're pulling the strings, and who knows? I mean, J.P. Morgan had his fingers in everything, and his corporation has their fingers in everything, and it's run by the Rockefellers, and they have their fingers in everything, and they're controlled by the Rothschilds. They have their fingers in everything, and they get that. Look, the Rothschilds aren't the top of the heap either. Don't get me wrong. They don't control the royal family of England. That's a fallacy. They work hand in hand with the royal family. They're all part of the black nobility families that rule things. And I don't even believe that they're the top of the pyramid. There's probably people. There's got to be something above them, because they're not smart enough to come up with half the stuff that they do. Look what happens when you allow them to come up with their own stuff. You get things like the fake Bin Laden psyop.
Never tolerate outrageous
ridiculous. Or 9/11.
Concerning the attacks of September the 11th.
Thanks, George. Guys, going to break. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye, from FederalJack.com. We'll be right back. We're going to pay some bills.
People are always asking me, yo, Gemini, what's your angle? Are you a devil or an angel? And I say both. As I continue to blame the Knights Templar and the Hospitallers, the real reason New York lost their towers. Don't sit back or hesitate.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Popeye. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. Before we went to break, we were discussing video fakery and HARP and Tesla and free electricity and directed energy weapons and scalar technology. And if anybody listening thinks this is crazy, it's not. It's all out there. The electricity you have in your house is alternating current. And if it weren't for Tesla, you wouldn't have it. The remote that you watch your TV with, you wouldn't have the wireless technology if it weren't for Tesla. Your cell phone, the wireless technology that was the first cell phones were based off of, were because of Tesla's work. Shall I go on? and yet you're not taught about him in high school. You're taught about Thomas Alva Edison, but or however you say his name. If I think that's his middle name was Alva, I could be wrong, but you're taught about Thomas Edison, and you're not taught about Tesla at all. And if you hear about Tesla, they make him always sound like a crazy kook. This guy was definitely not an idiot savant. He was not stupid. The guy was just, he might have had quirks, as many highly intelligent people do, but this guy was amazing. He was a genius. And they feared his genius because Tesla wasn't an evil guy. He couldn't be corrupted like these people. He wasn't the kind of guy that would sell out. So because he wasn't a scumbag, he ended up living in poverty most of his life, and he died a broke man. And he invented many of the things that you take advantage of today. So at least do the guy the honor of researching who he is and educating, the people around you as to who Nikola Tesla was. Amazing, amazing individual. And his work has been ripped off by our government today. And again, it's used in HARP technology. It's used in other scalar weapons. It's amazing. The technology we have today is just incredible. We have rail guns, stuff they won't admit. I know somebody that told me that when he was a fellow vet, told me when he was active duty, he saw an M1 Abrams tank, and this guy's an honest guy. Like, he wouldn't, this guy's not the type of guy that would make up stuff. I know him. He's a personal friend of mine, and he told me he's seen rail guns on an M1 Abrams tank. And that's why they're not worried about giving the M1 Abrams tank as we know them today to the Iraqis. If you notice, we just gave them a bunch of Abrams tanks, and we're teaching them how to use Abrams tanks. And Egypt has Abrams tanks. Why would we give all these Middle Eastern nations tanks that we have that would put them on the same level as us? Well, that means that we have something. When we start selling our weapons to other people, that means, like, we sell certain weapons, but when we start selling tanks and stuff that we have to other countries, we have something better already. You just don't know about it yet because it doesn't make sense. The military wouldn't do that. The military, they're not retarded. The Pentagon wouldn't do something stupid like that. And I know the technology that they have out there, so it makes perfect sense that they would sell the older tanks, the 20-year-old, version of these tanks to, and they're not 20-year-old tanks. They're new tanks. They're just, they're going off older designs, and there might be specific things, added or taken away for the Iraqi desert. But those are not the tanks that our military, if that's not the hidden stuff that we have. And the other purpose it serves is when you're creating a world government and you're going to have a world army, it pays to have all of the same equipment, because it's a lot easier to fight your enemies if you're on a tank and your tank gets taken out, and you can run over and just hop in the guy's tank next to you if he gets killed, and take his tank and run with it. Or vice versa. If your tank gets taken out and you get killed, somebody can run over and take, at least take your tank if they can man it and ride off on it. So, if you're creating a world army, it also makes sense. It's a little creepy to know that all these, and I'm not picking on the Middle Eastern countries, but it's creepy to know all these Middle Eastern countries have a lot of the same weapons we have. I mean, the Israeli Air Force wouldn't exist if it weren't for the United States. So every time they bomb the crap out of Gaza, the United States citizens should really take that into account. That's your tax dollars at work right there. We're giving them all these F-16s and everything. It's very telling how we arm both sides of the conflict. The Egyptians don't like the Israelis, and the Israelis really aren't too fond of the Egyptians, and yet we've armed both of them. Now, I know they would have gotten their armaments if it weren't from us, from somebody else, but so that makes it any better. So, that's better to make a profit off of it. That's not an excuse. And I hear that from people. Well, if we didn't sell them stuff, somebody else would do it. Well, how do you know that, first of all? And second of all, you're right. When it comes to armament, they probably would get it from somewhere else. I mean, the Egyptians came to us after World War II and asked for armament, and we wouldn't give them. Finally, they had to go buy stuff from the Soviet Union, but they begged us for it, And the equipment that they had at the time, they didn't have proper training and stuff. That's how come the Israelis were able to kick the crap out of them in the 6-Day War. The initial fight was like 90,000 well-trained, well-armed, some of them were already battle-hardened Israelis versus 30,000 demoralized, horribly trained, ill-equipped, ill-armed Egyptian troops. Well, that's not really a fair fight, That's like picking a fist fight with a mentally retarded kid that had just drank a 6-pack in 10 minutes. Come on. It's not fair. I'm not picking on Israel. I'm not trying to, for anybody in the audience that's Jewish or I don't want to be called an anti-Semite. I'm not picking on I'm not picking on the citizens. I'm just saying, I'm stating facts. And again, if you research the 6-Day War, you'll realize that there was actually a military coup inside the government of Israel about 4 days before that whole thing kicked off and before the Liberty was attacked and everything else. So there really was no Arab threat to wipe out all of Israel. That was just some rhetoric. Even the top Israelis admitted later on. I got to look up the guy's name. He's a BBC war correspondent. He was there. His name's Ben, but I have to try to find it. He wrote a couple books about it, and the title of the one book is Zionism: The Real Enemy of the Jews, and it's incredible because you see that the Israelis leadership admitted that they started that. There was no reason that they had to go in there and fight Nasser of Egypt. There was no reason at all. There was no reason to attack Jordan and Syria and take the Golan Heights. There was not. I mean, for the Israelis, they had their own reasons, but there was no military protection reason. There, strategic value to them maybe, but for protection, no. Invasion, yes. Protecting yourselves from other people, no. There was no way that they could have screwed with Israel, and they knew this. And it's a very shady situation. But there was a military coup in Israel a couple of days before, and the secretary, their version of the Secretary of Defense, I don't know if they called him the defense minister or whatever, but he's the one that ordered the attack on the USS Liberty, and Secretary Diane, and he was an evil dude. He's kind of about as evil as Ariel Sharon is. And the rest of them, these people don't care about. They don't want to. They don't want peace. They don't want a Palestinian state. They want them all wiped off the planet. And don't think that Zionism is not an Israeli thing, because you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. It's like a political ideology. And yes, I guess. There are mostly the Zionists are these hardcore right-wing Jews in Israel, but these guys aren't the Jews that you think they are. They're not the Jew next door down the street. And I have news for you: a lot of people in the Jewish community don't back what Israel does because they see what Israel is doing as a war crime. So you can't blame every Jewish person for the crimes of a nation state. Okay, that's like blaming every American citizen for the crimes that Barack Obama and his administration have done, or the crimes of George Bush, or the crimes of the Clinton administration, or Bush Sr., or the Reagan administration. To a certain extent, we should be held accountable because we're allowing this stuff to go on. Now, many of us were asleep back in the day. Now we're waking up. Now, something needs to be done about it. We need to have arrests and hearings and hold these people accountable. Otherwise we're going to be held accountable like the Germans were. All right, guys, we're going to break. We'll be back in a few minutes. The name of that writer, by the way, is Alan Hart. Alan Hart, Zionism, the Real Enemy of the Jews. Go look it up on Amazon. Welcome back, guys. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye, from federaljack.com. Make sure you tune in next week, because next week I have special guest Professor James Fetzer on from 5 to 7 for a full 2 hours. No, I will not be taking any phone calls because I'm going to be going over a ton of stuff with James, and I do not want you guys to miss anything. We're going to be talking a lot about the death of Paul Wellstone. I call it the assassination of Paul Wellstone because after I'm only halfway through Fetzer's book on the subject, and I'm already convinced that it was an assassination just because it was standard operating procedure for these people. They covered things up. The FBI was there before the NTSB, which breaks protocol. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but I don't want to spoil it. So next week, Professor James Fetzer, we're going to be discussing everything JFK, 9/11, and especially the death of Senator Paul Wellstone. So do not miss it next Sunday from 5 to 7 p.m. right here on the Orion Talk Radio Network, Micro 1650 AM. And in the future, I plan on having more and more interesting guests on for you guys because, you give me your time during the Sunday, so I want to give you as much information as I possibly can. Also, breaking news. I'll be on Wednesdays and Fridays, hopefully starting this Friday. If not this Friday, then the following Wednesday. But, we have to get some technical stuff done. I have to get my bumpers and stuff ready. But it's going to be the same show, Down the Rabbit Hole. But I'm going to have an extra 2 hours during the week as well as my Sunday show. So I'll have Wednesday nights from 10 to 11 and Friday nights from 10 to 11 right here, Eastern Standard Time on the Orion Talk Radio Network. And you'll be able to listen to me. And I'm going to cover the same topics. I'm going to try to get on some guests during the week too. During the week it's 1 hour per show. So that'll allow me to kind of I could get on a guest like on a Wednesday and a Friday. I could do special guests sometimes. Sometimes I could just do rants. Like it's really cool. So I got to thank Jimmy X for giving me the space and the time. I know John Preston is going to be also getting more time during the week. I'm not sure if I remember the days correctly, so I don't want to give out the wrong times, but listen to his show 7 to 9 tonight, and I'm sure John will give you some of the information about it. But, hopefully next Friday will be my first Friday show. The best way to find out and, stay in touch with me to find out, follow me on Twitter or Facebook because when it comes to the show, I post things there. You can also follow the Orion Talk Radio Network on Facebook. Check us out. Look up the Orion Talk Radio Network. And befriend us, like us, share us to your friends, pass us around like a joint at a frat party. We're not going away, folks. Free speech, and it's here to stay until they pull the internet, and then we'll have to figure out another way to get the show out. But we will, because it will only be a matter of hours before an underground internet arises. So, guys, I really want to thank you for listening to the show. Before I go any further with anything else today, I want to thank the listeners. Every week you guys make the show what it is because you're willing to donate your 2 hours of the day and listen to me ramble or listen to me give out information and listen to my guests talk about what they want to talk about. And it means a lot to me. So I want to say thank you very much. Again, the chat room is up. So if you guys want to go to the chat room, it's DTRH, short for Down the Rabbit Hole, fj.chatandgo.com. So it's dtrhfj.chatandgo.com. And you guys can join in the chat room. Feel free to chat with anybody even during the week if I'm not on the radio. Try to hook up with your local activists. Try to find out the local We Are Change chapters or 9/11 Truth chapters or Ron Paul chapters. And try to hook up. If you go to a Ron Paul rally and not everybody at the rally wants to listen to 9/11 Truth, try to give out DVDs. Some people will take it. You'll sow the seeds of truth, and then maybe they can sit down with their friends and they can show them the movie. It's important to hook up with your neighbors. It's important to hook up with people around you because when all hell breaks loose, your friends 3,000 miles away aren't going to be able to help you. They're going to want to, but they're not going to be able to help you. So I suggest that you wake up your neighbors as well and get them on board, and then they can wake up their families, and then they can wake up their friends and families, and so on and so on and so on. And that's how we're going to win this, is through knowledge and power and light and love. No fear. The only thing to fear is fear itself. We operate on 2 vibrational frequencies, fear and love. And, don't be afraid, people, because fear is what they want. They want to feed into this huge fear resonance. They want your body to give off that resonance of fear. Our bodies are like our DNA is shaped so that it's a transmitter, receiver, antenna. Okay, so our bodies are constantly transmitting and receiving signals and energy. And if everybody's constantly afraid, then you're going to be in survival mode. You're not going to be thinking straight. You're going to make stupid decisions. You're going to be easily led around by the nose. Whereas if everybody lived in a world full of light and love, it would be much different. And I'm not trying to sound like a peace, hippie activist or anything like that. Couldn't be farthest from. I'm not a hippie, but it's true. If everybody just operates on the frequency of love and no fear, things will be much better in this planet. We won't be wanting to shoot each other and scared of each other. Cops react the way they do is because they're trained to be afraid of civilians. That's why they do the things they do. They do it out of fear. You think that cop would act the same way if he didn't have that baton? And he didn't have his badge and anything else? He wouldn't come up to you and attack you. He'd be afraid of you and leave you alone. They wouldn't screw with you. And I'm not saying that cops drive around in their cars, when you see these aggressive ones, but it's based on that fear resonance. I'm not saying that they're all wimps or anything like that. I'm just saying it's based on fear resonance. That's what it is. Right? They feed off of that, and then they're programmed. They're operating off that fear resonance. They're not thinking. They're not doing any critical thinking. They're reacting, and then they get their strings pulled by the higher up puppet masters. These people. These sick elites, they think in terms of 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they've got plenty of practice of playing with people's minds and everything. They do this stuff all the time. They don't care about us. Henry Kissinger, referred to military men and women as dogs. And if you look up, actually, there's a lot of interesting research. If you look it up, you'll find out that the symbolism that police officers and military members, their full dress uniforms and stuff are festooned with are actually degrading to them. They're actually meant to be degrading to the person, and the military member doesn't know this, but to these elites and to these higher ups, that's what it means, and that's why they laugh. The word cop actually means like copy, as in a carbon copy, they're useless drones, and they're just a copy, and they're to be used, abused, and thrown away. It's very, very, very telling. When you understand how these people look at not only the civilians, like I've said 100 times, they want to kill 80% of us, but they're going to get rid of the cops and all the jackboot thugs. If any of you listening, you TSA thugs, you think you guys are safe. You're not. You're not part of the system. The brown shirts, Hitler's brown shirts, thought they were part of the system too, and they found out they were wrong. Dead wrong. So do yourself a favor, research history, and find out which side of history you want to be on when it repeats itself. Do you want to be on the losing end, like the Night of Long Knives, Rome's Purge, or do you want to be on the winning end? Because the brown shirts, they rounded up everybody, and it wasn't just Jews, it was disabled, the mentally ill, old people, communists, trade unionists, people that didn't agree with the Nazi Party, dissenters, people from the Nazi Party that pissed Hitler off, his own generals. I think it was he had 4,500 army officers rounded up when he came to power and sent to camp back in the early 30s. I mean, it's ridiculous what they did. They killed their own people first. They rounded up, they cleaned Germany out of the undesirables first, and then they went about to do the rest to the rest of Europe. And Hitler wanted to create a new world order, and when you go research Hitler, you'll find out he was funded by the Rothschilds and all these very same people, who've also funded, our side of the war. Rockefeller, for instance, U.S. Standard Oil. The Luftwaffe wouldn't have been able to fly their planes and bomb the hell out of everything if U.S. Standard Oil didn't make a special additive that the plane needed to fly. And the only people that made that additive was U.S. Standard Oil, owned by the Rockefeller family. So that's just a small little example of how World War II was funded by both sides. You know, but yet I don't see the Rockefellers being called Nazi sympathizers. I don't see David Rockefeller getting dragged out into Times Square and beaten with a 3-inch metal baton. I don't see Nick Rockefeller or Senator Jay Rockefeller, who says the internet never should have existed. I don't see him being dragged out and arrested. You know, the people I see getting beat and tased in the streets are civilians, ladies, little old ladies. You know, and again, that goes right back to the Bin Laden psyop. All these people partying outside the White House, and nobody was arrested or beaten and tased. Right. I smell BS. All right, guys, it's been a great show. Thank you for listening. Tune in next week. Professor James Fetzer with me for 2 hours. Paul Wellstone's death, 9/11, and JFK. Stay tuned for John Preston's show here on the Ryan Talk Radio Network.
Murdered and tortured, raped and pillaged. I was only 5 and I was the only surviving witness. My entire village burned to the ground. He wore a serpent in his crown. Happily committed murder with a frown. And an army of black hooded fiery skull generals and a sorcerer that can cast spells that'll change.